There's something men wish they could hear more than "I love you." And here's the crazy part. Most women have no idea what it is. This phrase, it's not sexy, it's not poetic, and it doesn't sound like something you'd see in a rom-com. But when a man hears it, it hits different. It unlocks something deep, primal even. It cuts through his emotional defenses, drops his guard, and makes him feel seen in a way that almost nothing else can. But here's the truth. Less than 1% of women say it. Not because they don't care, but because society never taught them that men need to hear this just as much as women need emotional safety. So if you're tired of surface-level advice like just communicate better or be more confident, you're in the right place. Because in this video, we're going far deeper. I'm about to reveal the phrase that builds trust without trying, creates emotional intimacy without pressure, and can completely shift how a man sees you, whether you're just dating or 10 years into a relationship. And if you've ever felt like you're giving your all but still not reaching his heart, this is probably why. So don't blink, because what I'm about to share might be the simplest yet most transformative insight you'll ever hear about men. If you ask most people what men want, you'll hear answers like respect, sex, admiration. And sure, those things do matter. But beneath all of that, beneath the pride, the logic, the bravado, there's something far more vulnerable happening inside the male mind. What men actually crave is emotional significance. They want to feel like they matter beyond what they do, not just for their job, their status, their ability to provide, or their performance in a relationship, but for who they are at their core. Here's the issue. Most men have been taught from a young age that emotions make them weak, that expressing fear, doubt, confusion, or even softness makes them less of a man. So they build walls, they deflect, they stay silent. And over time, they stop expecting anyone to really see them, let alone understand them. But underneath that silence is a powerful, unmet need to feel emotionally safe with a woman. Not just loved, but accepted in their most unguarded state. That's where this phrase we're leading up to becomes so important. It's not about boosting his ego. It's not about manipulation. It's about meeting him in the one place he rarely invites anyone, his emotional blind spot. Men are craving to be told something that cuts through the noise of "be a man," and instead says, "You don't have to earn this connection. I see you, I respect you, not for what you do, but for who you are." When a woman speaks to that part of a man, his entire nervous system shifts. He feels like he can finally exhale. That's when he lets you in. That's when he attaches, trusts, and chooses to stay, not out of obligation, but because he feels safe in your presence. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about understanding who he is underneath everything he's been taught to be. And when you do that, everything changes. A major reason why so few women ever say the phrase "we're building toward" is because of a series of deeply rooted misconceptions, misunderstandings about men that are so common, they're often mistaken for truth. One of the biggest, the belief that men are emotionally simple, or worse, emotionally unavailable by nature, that they don't feel things deeply or don't care the same way women do. But that's not just false, it's damaging. Men are just as emotional as women, but the way they're taught to express, or more accurately, suppress those emotions is radically different. So when a man shuts down, stays quiet, or avoids conflict, it's not always because he doesn't care. Often it's because he doesn't know if it's safe to be vulnerable, or he doesn't have the tools to articulate what he feels. Another misconception is thinking that giving a man space means he's losing interest. In reality, many men process emotions internally. It's how they regain control, make sense of things, and avoid saying something they'll regret. When a woman interprets that withdrawal as rejection, she may overreact, pressure him to open up, or assume the worst, creating tension that didn't need to exist. There's also the belief that men only value respect in a broad, impersonal way through admiration, status, or obedience. But what many women don't realize is that respect to a man is deeply emotional. It's not just about being admired, it's about feeling understood without being judged. When a man senses that a woman genuinely respects his effort, his vulnerability, and even his moments of uncertainty, that's when he softens. And here's a big one. The idea that men are supposed to be the strong ones, the decision makers, the emotional rock all the time, that belief can make women hesitate to express emotional support, assuming he's got it handled, or he doesn't need to hear that from me. But he does, maybe more than anyone realizes. Many women also believe that expressing appreciation or emotional encouragement makes them seem overly eager or needy. But in truth, it's often those quiet, sincere affirmations that men remember most, because they're so rare. Most men go through life carrying silent burdens, unspoken pressure, and emotional isolation they never talk about. A few intentional words can feel like a lifeline. These misconceptions are no one's fault. They're passed down through culture, media, and even well-meaning advice. But once we see through them, we unlock the ability to connect with men on a level that most people never reach. Because when a woman learns to speak to the real man behind the mask, she doesn't just get his attention, she earns his trust, his loyalty, and the part of him he never shows to the world. And in the next section, we'll explore what happens when he never hears those words, and why the absence of this phrase can leave even the strongest men feeling unseen and emotionally alone. So what actually happens when men don't hear this phrase? When the words that speak directly to their emotional core are never spoken by their partner, their family, or anyone at all. Over time, they begin to shut down. Not because they want to, but because silence starts to feel safer than vulnerability. A man who doesn't feel seen or appreciated emotionally will often retreat into performance. He'll overwork, overcompensate, or chase external validation, success, status, control. Because internally, he's starving for something much simpler to be acknowledged without having to earn it. When that emotional connection is missing, men often feel like they're only valued for what they do, not for who they are. And it creates a quiet kind of pain, a deep, invisible loneliness. It's not loud, it doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like distraction. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like anger. Men who never hear this phrase, the one that tells them they matter even in their most vulnerable state, begin to carry the weight of life silently. They learn not to ask for support. They don't bring up their doubts. They don't talk about the pressure, or the fears, or the ways they feel inadequate. They just keep going, because that's what they've been taught to do. And here's the heartbreaking part. These men often show up for everyone else. They take care of people. They show strength. They provide, protect, and stay reliable. But no one thinks to check on them in the way they truly need. No one says the words that tell them, you don't have to carry it all alone. So what happens next? Relationships start to feel empty. A man might still be physically present, but emotionally withdrawn. You can feel it when you talk to him. He's not really there. The connection fades, not because the love is gone, but because it was never fully nurtured on an emotional level. And eventually this emotional silence can lead to resentment. He may feel unappreciated, unseen, or misunderstood, but he doesn't always have the language to express it. So he detaches, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. And the most painful part, the woman in his life may have no idea what she missed. She may think everything was fine. This is why that one phrase, those few words that reach into his emotional space, matter so much. They interrupt the silence. They break through the walls. They tell him, you're not just strong, you're human. And I see that. That's not just powerful, that's healing. And it's exactly what we'll unlock in the next section, where I reveal the exact phrase and why it changes everything. Here it is, the moment we've been building toward after breaking down what men actually need, why they don't always show it, and what happens when that need is ignored. It's time to share the phrase. The one sentence that only about 1% of women naturally say, yet when spoken with sincerity, can shift a man's entire emotional state, open the door to deeper connection, and create a level of trust and intimacy most couples never reach. The phrase is simple. It's not flowery. It's not poetic, but it's powerful. I'm proud of the man you are, even when no one's watching. Let that land for a second, because in those few words, you're not just complimenting what he does. You're affirming who he is. You're reaching beyond the roles he plays, the provider, the partner, the problem solver, and touching the part of him that wonders if he's enough, when no one is clapping, when no one is noticing, when he's alone with his thoughts and doubts. This phrase cuts through his armor. Why? Because it offers unconditional emotional respect, not based on his performance, his income, or how well he handles things. It says, I see the integrity behind the scenes. I see your quiet effort. I see your heart when you're not trying to impress anyone. Most men live their lives striving to be good enough in a world that rarely tells them they already are. This one sentence is a kind of emotional exhale. It tells him he doesn't have to prove himself to you. He can simply be. Now, timing and delivery matter. This phrase isn't something to toss out casually or manipulate with. It has to come from a genuine place. You might say it after a tough day, after he shares something vulnerable, after he does something small that no one else noticed but you did. For example, he doesn't talk about his stress, but he still shows up for everyone else. He doesn't complain, but you know he's carrying a lot. That's when you gently say, hey, I just want you to know I'm really proud of the man you are, even when no one's watching. You'll see his entire body shift. His eyes may soften. He might even go quiet, not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered so much. He doesn't know how to respond, because this phrase isn't just about validation, it's about recognition. And recognition, genuine, soul-level recognition, is what makes a man feel truly safe, seen, and emotionally connected. This is how you reach the version of him that most people never get to meet. And in the next section, we'll break down why this phrase works so powerfully, psychologically, and emotionally, and how it taps into core emotional triggers that drive lasting attachment and trust. So why does this one phrase, I'm proud of the man you are, even when no one's watching, actually work on such a deep level? It comes down to emotional triggers, the subconscious cues that make someone feel safe, seen, and deeply valued. While many women are conditioned to respond to love through verbal affection and emotional closeness, most men are conditioned to associate respect with love. In fact, for many men, respect is love, and not surface-level respect, the kind that says good job or you're amazing in public. What truly impacts them is private, personal recognition. They want to feel respected for who they are when they're not performing. That's rare. And that's exactly what this phrase delivers. It activates what psychologists call the core self-worth loop, the internal dialogue we all carry about whether or not we are enough. For men, this loop is often tied to what they produce, or how well they protect and provide. They're taught from early on that love must be earned through action, strength, or success. As a result, most men walk through life with a lingering fear that if they stop being useful, they'll stop being lovable. When you say, I'm proud of the man you are, even when no one's watching, you're disrupting that pattern. You're saying, you don't need to perform for me, you're already enough. And here's the fascinating part. It also triggers something called the receptive vulnerability response. When a man feels emotionally safe and deeply respected, his nervous system shifts from guarded to open. That's when real connection happens. That's when he becomes more communicative, more affectionate, and more emotionally present. Not because you asked him to, but because he feels safe enough to be. This phrase also speaks to another psychological layer, significance without conditions. Every human wants to feel significant, but what makes someone stay in a relationship is feeling significant without having to earn it all the time. This is where many relationships fall apart. The man feels like his value is conditional on how much he does. The woman feels like he's emotionally distant. Both are operating from fear, not connection. But this phrase interrupts that loop entirely. It gives him something rare, emotional grace, and the moment he receives it, something shifts. He starts showing up more fully. He starts sharing things he's never said. He becomes less reactive, more grounded, more committed, not because he was pressured, but because he finally feels understood. So no, this isn't just a compliment. It's a direct line to the emotional core of a man's identity. It affirms him in the one place he's been silently hoping someone would finally see. And next, we're going to look at real-life examples of what happens when women actually use this phrase, and how their relationships change almost instantly. Let's bring this to life with real stories, real moments where women used this phrase and saw instant, powerful changes in their connection with the men in their lives. One woman shared that her partner had been going through a stressful time at work. He wasn't talking about it much, just quietly grinding through it, coming home exhausted, emotionally checked out. She was starting to take it personally. She thought maybe he was losing interest or pulling away. Instead of confronting him with frustration, she decided to try the phrase we talked about. One night, after dinner, she sat next to him, placed her hand on his chest, and simply said, "I just want you to know, I'm proud of the man you are, even when no one's watching." She said he didn't say a word. He just looked at her, eyes watering slightly, and hugged her in a way he hadn't in months. No performance, no ego, just pure, quiet presence. The next morning, for the first time in weeks, he opened up. He told her how overwhelmed he'd been, how he felt like he couldn't afford to show weakness, and that her words gave him a kind of peace he didn't even realize he needed. That moment reconnected them, not with drama or effort, but through respect and emotional safety. Another story comes from a woman who had been dating someone for a few months. Things were going well, but she felt like there was an invisible wall, like he wasn't fully letting her in. After hearing this phrase, she decided to use it during a casual conversation. He had just mentioned helping his friend move all weekend, and instead of brushing past it, she said, "You know, I really admire how you show up for people, even when there's nothing in it for you. I'm proud of the man you are, even when no one's watching." She told me he got completely still, almost like his brain paused. Then he said, "Wow, no one's ever said that to me before." From that moment on, he started texting her more, initiating deeper conversations, sharing parts of his life he had kept guarded. Because when a man hears this kind of affirmation, when he feels respected at his core, something opens. It's not about flattery, it's not about control, it's about witnessing him in his full humanity. And when he feels seen that way, he stops holding back. These reactions aren't rare, they're normal when emotional connection is finally made in a way that speaks his language. And in the next section, we'll talk about how to use this phrase authentically, how to deliver it so it lands deeply, without feeling forced, fake, or awkward. By now you understand how powerful this phrase is, but the how you say it matters just as much as the words themselves. If it comes across as rehearsed, robotic, or overly strategic, it can fall flat, or worse, feel manipulative. So let's talk about how to deliver this phrase in a way that's real, heartfelt, and deeply felt by the man receiving it. First, timing is everything. This isn't a phrase to use when tensions are high, during an argument, or right after a disagreement. That's when it can feel forced or like an attempt to smooth things over without dealing with the real issue. Instead, use it during quiet, grounded moments, when he's calm, when you're connected, or when he's shown up in a subtle way that might otherwise go unnoticed. For example, after he helps someone without being asked, stays up late working on something he cares about, or quietly supports you when you're having a hard day, those are the perfect opportunities. These are the moments when he's not looking for praise, which makes your words feel even more genuine. Second, keep your energy soft and sincere. This isn't a performance. Don't look for a dramatic reaction or expect an emotional outburst in return. In fact, some men might go silent, not because it didn't affect them, but because it did. Many men aren't used to receiving that kind of emotional nourishment. Give them space to process it. Sometimes the silence is the impact. Third, don't overuse it. The power of this phrase lies in its rarity and depth. If you say it every day, in every situation, it becomes routine and loses meaning. Think of it like a high-quality gift, used sparingly but intentionally. It's not about flattery, it's about seeing something real and naming it. And here's a subtle but important point. This phrase shouldn't be used to get something in return. Not affection, not attention, not commitment. If your motivation is to get a reaction, it will come across as manipulative, even if unintentional. Use this phrase because it's true, because you see the effort, the consistency, the quiet strength, and you respect it. Full stop. Authenticity always resonates more than perfection. You don't need to say it flawlessly. In fact, sometimes it's even more powerful when it's said imperfectly, with emotion in your voice. That's when it lands. That's when it sticks. So trust yourself. If you feel it in your heart, say it. The words don't have to be scripted. They just need to be real. And when they are, you'll witness something shift, not just in him, but in the connection between you. Coming up next, we'll wrap everything together with a powerful takeaway and give you a simple challenge to immediately start creating more emotional depth in your relationship. So we've come full circle. We started with a phrase that almost no one talks about, one that most women have never been taught to say, but that every man secretly longs to hear. And now you know it, but more importantly, you understand why it matters. You understand that behind the strength, the silence, and the problem-solving exterior, most men carry a question deep inside. Am I only valuable when I'm useful? And the phrase, I'm proud of the man you are, even when no one's watching, answers that question in a way that penetrates straight to the heart. It tells him, I see your character, not just your contribution. It tells him, you're enough. Even when you're not on, it tells him, you don't need to earn my respect. You already have it. And here's the most important part. When a man feels that level of emotional safety, he opens. He becomes the best version of himself, not out of pressure, but out of peace. That's how lasting intimacy is built. That's how relationships grow from surface level to soul deep. So let's leave you with something simple, but powerful. Here's your relationship boost challenge. Over the next 48 hours, find one natural, quiet moment to say the phrase. Not when he's doing something grand or impressive, but in a small, everyday moment. Maybe when he doesn't realize anyone noticed. When he's just being himself. It could be after he makes time for a friend, handles something stressful without complaining, or just shows up as the steady presence he always is. And when you see that moment, pause, look him in the eye, put your hand on his chest or his arm, and say it, I'm proud of the man you are, even when no one's watching. Then leave space. Don't explain it. Don't rush it. Let it land. Let him feel it. You might not see a dramatic reaction, but you will have planted something deep. Respect, connection, trust. That's the kind of moment a man remembers long after it's passed. And if you're not in a relationship right now, that's okay. You can still practice this. Tell your brother, your father, your male friend. You'd be amazed what happens when men receive genuine, unearned affirmation. It's healing. Because here's the truth. Men aren't hard to love. They're just rarely loved in the language that reaches them. Now that you know that language, you have a choice. To keep things as they've always been, or to go deeper. And if you're ready for that depth, this is your first step. Say the words, mean them, watch what happens. If this video spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And drop a comment below. What moment will you choose to say it? Let's start a new kind of conversation, one that changes everything.